Emotions, so important, and yet they are so overlooked. Why and when did being emotional become a negative characteristic? My name is Michelle Wingle, and my soul's purpose is to move the planet forward, healing myself and others emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I know that to be true. That is my soul's purpose. As weird as it is to think about, we are often unaware of the emotions we are experiencing for a couple of reasons. First, in order to recognize what we are feeling or thinking, we must first observe it. And most of the time, we are just in the thick of it. We can't observe it. We're just full on feeling it, and that's normal and human. But this is one of the reasons why mindfulness is so important, because when we build that muscle of being able to observe, simply observe, along with living in our experience, our world moves into a kind of, it's like a third dimension aliveness. It's amazing. And doesn't that sound exciting to live more in 3D, we could say? The second reason for being unaware of our emotions is the disconnection we have with the physical body. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's a real phenomenon. Those I have coached with trauma often remember the scene of their trauma from a bird's eye view or from a corner of the room. But I believe that we actually separate our bodies in a much more everyday way, and that happens kind of similar, but not so dramatic. Those of us living in more affluent countries, for instance, or towns or neighborhoods, we don't really know the true sensation of hunger, especially that hunger for food that will nourish our body. Mostly because we overeat and we push those full sensations aside. We ignore the body's message of stop, too much. And this is why when we do this, it's a key factor in our weight loss issues, our weight issues. Remember to sign up if you have that. Remember to sign up for my free At Your Own Pace workshop on my website if you'd like support in this area. I lost 4 dress sizes about 12 years ago, and I've been there. And I understand all that gaining and losing weight bring up emotionally, especially. But we have physical aspects, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects to that as well. But this is another reason why we separate or disconnect from our bodies, because we've moved those sensations and made them be different. So to really feel our emotions, we must do 2 things. Like I said, first, we need to add the observer, just have an outside observer of what's going on. And 2, be able to tune into the messages your body is sending by practice and feeling them. Emotions are key to living in wholeness. And we have been convinced that feeling angry, especially for women, or sorrow, which tears, especially for men, are signs of a character flaw. They are unwelcome in our experience for whatever reason. And we have agreed as a society to create a hierarchy of emotions. And it makes sense in a way, because there are emotions that deplete our energy and vitality, and there are emotions that energize us and even heal us. They can heal us mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, these emotions. But think of it this way. If we filled our car with fuel or energy, and then we just kept filling it and filling it and filling it with fuel or energy, we wouldn't go anywhere. It is actually burning the fuel or depleting the fuel that gets us to places. There is a quote by an anonymous person that says, "Remember that life's greatest lessons are usually learned at the worst times." And I think that's true. That's when we're burning our fuels, when we're going places. Recently, I heard Tom Brady speak about winning and losing. And he said that, of course, he loves to win, of course. But when you are winning, you are never looking at ways to improve. That's just true. When you lose, he said, you ponder and you question every move and you strive to be better. So all of the emotions have value. But what we must actually do is we must actually experience them. We must feel them and be familiar with the sensations that belong to those emotions. The other day I was watching Shopaholic, Confessions of a Shopaholic, one of my favorite little chick flicks. And in this moment of decision, she said, I just have this feeling. I have this feeling. And her mom was there, and her mom said, that feeling that you shouldn't do it, I get that back here in my back and my neck. And his dad says, I get it in my chest. We all experience sensations a little differently, but they are the messengers for guidance in our life. You know, the spiritual body wants us to move in connection with those around us. The mental body wants us to be safe, first of all, but it also has ways of growing and expanding our experience. And our emotional body has these feelings, and those feelings are guidance, or they are our guidance system. They are one of our guidance systems. And we must be aware of the thoughts that cause and result from sensations. And we have to remember that sometimes the sensation comes almost a split second before, and then the thoughts come. The sensations, they come first, and they present something in our mind, tries to figure it out. I say it every time I'm on here, but trauma is at the core of these misunderstandings, and ignoring and labeling emotions is bad. It is trauma on a collective level and in a personal level. Trauma is not the traumatic event or experience. Trauma is what happens in the body. And once when I was a teenager, I was working at an amusement park, and there was a puddle of water on the ground, and I stepped in the puddle of water and touched the ride controls. So I created an arc, and I got a big shock, and I felt it vibrate through my body. I mean, it was a big shock. And it's funny, not funny, but I picked up the phone to try and call for help. And I'll never forget the feeling I had as I stared at the buttons, and all I could see in my mind what had happened, that there were these buttons. I had pushed these buttons and I had gotten shocked. But what kept coming out of my mouth was the piano. I kept trying to describe the buttons, but piano kept coming out of my mouth. I couldn't speak right. My brain's connections were all askew, and I was talking about the buttons, but it was the idea of the piano, that how somehow my brain was able to verbalize what was happening. It was kind of crazy. It was really weird. A traumatic experience, remembering that it is a very broad, traumatic experience is a very broad and personal definition. But traumatic experience caused trauma in the body like an electric shock. And the EMTs that were helping me and looked over me when I was shocked were very concerned that the electricity left in my body, if it hadn't come out and was still inside of me, it could cause a heart attack or worse. So damage from a shock can occur for up to 10 days if it's kind of like bouncing around in your body, and trauma is very much the same. The reaction your body has had, fight, flight, freeze, or appease, can be felt by the nervous system for days, weeks, or years. Especially when we feel like we are in, or just appear to be in, a similar situation. Smells, sounds, anything can trigger that trauma to ignite within us. It's important to get that released. Lastly, to me, these things I am teaching and preaching about are so important because they are at the core of so much upset in the world. I know that's a big statement, but let me try to explain before I go. We have, as humans, two intrinsic, core, deep-seated, elemental drives, base, core desires within us. We want to be accepted and valued, and we want to be an individual and have a sense of self. Those are at the very core of human existence. Our outside world or community helps to create and form our beliefs, values, and traditions. And we hope to be accepted by our community. This is where we want that acceptance. And I cannot stress how much this desire for acceptance is vital to our well-being. It's super important. And we are accepted as long as our definitions within our individuality aligns with the communities or the rules that the community has. So we can live that place in a long time. And let me say this, that first, like in some ways, it is valuable to sacrifice ourselves for the whole. This is true. Belonging to a community requires common ideas and practices, and the spiritual body, this is what the spiritual body lives for. It needs connection, and it uses these kinds of experiences in the community to do so. But when someone chooses to hold on to their individuality or sense of self in the face of our community, it is our own sensations, emotions, and thinking that's really taking the hit. So many times in everyday life, someone expresses something, and that something goes against what we like or what we believe. And without the observance we were talking about, we react. But it's really the sensations inside our body or the thoughts or feelings within ourselves that we're really trying to pull away from. We don't like those feelings that happen inside ourselves. And why wouldn't we? It feels wrong and it feels uncomfortable physically. So we try to move those sensations away. But with observance, we can notice the discomfort and we can see it without being attached to it. And we can see the impact we are feeling. And that it is not coming from the outside. The actual words we hear or see in a post or a text or in the news are simply letters put together in sentences. They actually are completely benign. They do not have the power to create the sensations. Those are inside of us. And once we arrive at this kind of self-observation, we can begin to come together as a community and ultimately humans. This is what empathy is. This is compassion. The community and individuality are both equally important. Neither should win nor lose at the expense of another or the other. Listening to our healed inner observer will guide us when to act toward community and when to stand in our individuality. For sure, it will help us to belong to our community and allow others to keep their individuality and keep it intact and not feel like that individuality is coming as an attack. If you are interested in being coached through your emotions and or traumas, reach out to me at michellewingle.com. All over my website, my tagline is, I've been there too. We are all learning this together. And I am so grateful for all the clients that help me on my journey to healing as I hold space for theirs.